I'm the person who everybody just actually come to and deal with. I'm the one who is push out all the high-end vehicles and everything. So,
We're opening a
and
fascinating and, frankly, pretty disturbing stack of source material that details a massive international financial investigation. Our mission is direct. We're diving deep into a recent Canadian probe. It's uncovered what looks like a transnational luxury car duty evasion ring. And this highly sophisticated network seems to connect right back to systemic issues in Guyana.
And setting the stage here is, I think, vital. This isn't just a small-time operation with a few smuggled cars. Not at all.
Yeah.
The evidence points to a highly organized financial scheme, a system that seems designed for, deliberate and systematic revenue diversion. We're talking about an operation that officials now suspect may have cost Guyanese, billions of dollars in vital national revenue.
Yeah.
And what makes this investigation so pivotal is the core piece of evidence, an explosive audio recording. It features a high-end auto importer in Guyana, and he appears to just lay out the entire mechanism of the fraud.
That audio is the nexus of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't just suggest fraud. It seems to detail the internal mechanics and the shocking, almost casual confidence of the guy allegedly running it.
It's a textbook case.
Yeah, it's a textbook case of how highly organized crime can target a nation by exploiting its bureaucratic vulnerabilities. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with how they actually managed the physical fraud itself.
Let's jump in.
So Canadian investigators are focusing heavily on the core of this fraud, which is an illegal practice they're calling retagging or re-VINing.
Yeah.
For our listeners, what exactly does that entail? How does it actually work to defeat a customs inspection?
Right. So retagging is basically identity theft for a vehicle, and it's all done for one reason: massive tax avoidance. It's the illegal alteration of a car's VIN. That's the vehicle identification number, or, and this is critical, the engine classification on all the paperwork. Think of it this way. A vehicle's value, and therefore its import duty, is heavily based on its engine capacity and model year. The goal of retagging is pure deception. You take a high-duty, high-value luxury SUV, say, a top-tier Mercedes-Benz,
Right.
and you disguise it on paper as a low-value, low-engine model, or even a completely different, much cheaper vehicle.
So it's not just fudging a number on an invoice, which I imagine is pretty easy to spot. This sounds a lot more complex. I mean, if a specific digit in the VIN number signifies the engine type, the very thing that determines the duty, how difficult is it for these networks to fake that and get it past an inspection?
Well, that's where the sophistication comes in. It's way more than just changing a number on a sticker. The sources imply they're tampering with the actual physical data plates.
Wow.
And crucially, they're generating fraudulent manufacturer paperwork that looks completely legit. It mirrors the structure of a real VIN. They're basically banking on the assumption that a customs officer who's dealing with, thousands of imports.
Right, they're busy.
They're busy. They're not going to run a deep forensic check on every single VIN, especially if the paperwork looks, on the surface, totally compliant. By changing the vehicle's identity to show a tiny engine, the system automatically calculates a duty that's maybe a tenth of what's actually owed.
And the cumulative impact of that one act is just massive. This is where we get back to that billions of dollars figure. What does a loss like that even represent for a country like Guyana?
I mean, that figure is just staggering. If the alleged losses are confirmed to be in the billions of US dollars over time, we're talking about revenue that could equal a huge chunk of the country's annual non-oil economy.
Or its entire infrastructure budget.
Or its infrastructure budget, exactly. This isn't pocket change. This is the systematic starvation of funds that should be going to schools, to healthcare, to roads. The source material also notes that this scheme could finally explain the observed surge of these ultra-luxury vehicles entering Guyana, cars that mathematically should have such immense duties that only the super elite could ever afford the taxes on them.
Yet you see them everywhere.
Right. The fact that the streets are suddenly flooded with them, often at these improbably low declared values, suggests a systemic failure. A failure caused by this exact type of fraud.
It creates this immediate distortion in the national economy, where it seems like the ultra-rich are the only ones operating duty-free.
Exactly. And it suggests the state is, in effect, subsidizing luxury consumption for criminals.
Okay, so now let's get to the part of the story that really gives us insight into why this worked for so long. And this is where it gets really interesting, the content of that audio. The alleged Guyanese importer, he spoke with this shocking confidence to the exporter in Canada. What were his direct claims?
His claims suggest a level of impunity that's just hard to fathom. He spoke, according to the sources, with absolute assurance. He was explicitly bragging that he has customs on lock in Guyana.
Customs on lock.
Yes. And then, quite casually, he says that nobody checks anything. That statement right there is a huge red flag. It suggests this network wasn't just relying on, a few isolated bribes.
It suggests something much bigger.
Much bigger. It suggests systemic protection that gave him the confidence to guarantee the success of ongoing, large-scale criminal activity.
But hold on, if he's bragging about having customs on lock, why even bother with the complex, risky fraud like retagging? If you control customs, couldn't you just pay a small bribe for each shipment and declare a lower value? Just skip the whole VIN alteration thing.
That is an excellent question, and I think it really speaks to the scale of their ambition. A simple bribe might let you pay, say, half the duty. But the goal here isn't partial evasion, it's maximum evasion.
Wow.
They're often trying to reduce the duty from maybe 200% down to zero, or near zero. Retagging is the mechanism that generates the paperwork needed to justify that minimal or zero tax payment legally on the books.
Okay, I see.
The customs protection then ensures that the fraudulent paperwork is never challenged, never audited. It's a two-pronged strategy. The retagging commits the crime on paper.
And the customs on lock ensures the crime is ignored in person.
Precisely.
And beyond the retagging, the recording also revealed he was leveraging a second, and maybe even more serious, layer of fraud. Misusing legitimate duty-free arrangements.
Yes. That is arguably the most insidious part of this whole alleged operation. It implies corruption at a much higher administrative level. He claimed to the exporter that he already had 2 duty-free arrangements just lined up and ready to go for the expensive vehicles he wanted.
So for our listeners, who normally gets duty-free status, and why is that claim so significant?
Well, duty-free exemptions are typically reserved for very specific protected groups. Diplomats, accredited foreign investors, returning residents with special status, or essential government agencies.
Things like that.
Right. They're designed to incentivize legitimate activity. For him to claim he has access to duty-free slots for a Lamborghini and an Escalade suggests he's either fraudulently using the identity and paperwork of a legitimate beneficiary, or...
And this is worse.
Someone is selling them.
Like government officials are actively selling access to these highly protected exemptions to just bypass the system entirely, which would confirm a huge network of institutional corruption.
Yeah.
The source material also laid out a specific shopping list of vehicles, which really confirms the high-stakes nature of this.
Absolutely. The cars he wanted immediately were not moderately priced. We're talking about the highest duty imports. The Lamborghini, the Cadillac Escalade, the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon.
All the big ones.
Those are all models subject to astronomical import duties. It just confirms that the entire scheme was built around maximizing profit by targeting the maximum revenue loss for the state. He even tried to establish credibility by referencing several other Guyanese individuals who he claimed had previously shipped cars through him.
So he's saying this isn't his first time?
Exactly. He's assuring the exporter that this is a well-established, lucrative, and protected operation, not some one-time risk.
Let's move on to the third critical element of this deep dive, the operator's geographic strategy. I find this particularly telling. He had a very clear preference for where he did business and, more importantly, where he didn't. What did he say about the United States?
He was very, very explicit in the recording. He stated clearly that he does not do business in the United States because, and this is a quote, he doesn't like to mess with the U.S.
That's a huge operational detail. I mean, if the final market is Guyana, what makes the U.S. so prohibitive compared to Canada or the Caribbean, which he boasted he felt safe operating through?
It all comes down to regulatory risk assessment, or what you might call regulatory arbitrage. The U.S. has extremely powerful and well-funded agencies, especially the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, that actively monitor vehicle exports for fraud.
They're looking for this stuff.
They are looking for it, especially when it's linked to organized crime and money laundering. They treat commercial export fraud as a very serious financial crime with international implications.
So the implication is he thought he could find a softer touch somewhere else.
Precisely. His stated preference for Canada and the Caribbean suggests a deliberate attempt to exploit what he perceived as vulnerabilities. Canadian border services, while strict, historically might focus more of their resources on, say, inbound security threats.
Right, not so much on what's going out.
Maybe not. Making outbound commercial goods a perceived area of weakness for this specific type of fraud. This calculated avoidance of the U.S. just reinforces the belief among investigators that this is a sophisticated, long-running smuggling network that actively strategizes to find the path of least resistance.
So they're choosing their routes based on where they think they'll get the least scrutiny.
Exactly. On where they anticipate the least scrutiny of their fraudulent paperwork.
It really changes the narrative from just opportunistic crime to an organized cartel that's calculating which nation's regulatory framework is the weakest link.
It does. It shows a highly sophisticated awareness of international export monitoring systems. The fact that the Canadian investigation caught wind of this despite him feeling safe there suggests that, well, international monitoring is tightening up everywhere.
Okay, let's pull all of this together and look at the global consequences. This alleged operation could have cheated Guyana out of billions of dollars in taxes, and the existence of this audio recording has definitely triggered red flags globally. What are the specific international implications here? What happens next?
The fallout is multifaceted. It moves way beyond just criminal charges. First, you're looking at the potential for highly coordinated investigations between Canadian and Guyanese authorities. We're probably talking agencies like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and Guyanese law enforcement. That evidence has to be shared, and it has to be actionable in both countries.
That coordination sounds challenging, especially when the evidence itself implies corruption within the local system in Guyana.
It raises immediate legal and diplomatic hurdles, but the financial imperative is even greater. This evidence mandates immediate and widespread scrutiny of all duty-free concessions issued over the last several years.
So they have to go back in time.
They have to go back. Authorities can't just check future imports. They have to audit who got these exemptions and whether the vehicles imported under those names actually matched the legal criteria, or if those slots were just fraudulently sold to this auto importer.
And what about the sheer physical task of auditing every single high-end vehicle that entered the country under a suspicious declaration?
Yeah.
That has to be a logistical nightmare.
It is a monumental undertaking. It means Customs has to review clearance records for every high-end vehicle, cross-referencing VINs, engine codes, declared values, duty payments. It's a huge job.
I can't even imagine.
Given the scale of the alleged revenue loss, this is likely an audit that will stretch back a decade or more. And if the VINs were retagged, they'll need forensic analysis to determine the vehicle's true origin and identity.
So what does this all mean? The mechanics of retagging, the brazen confidence of customs on lock, and the strategic avoidance of U.S. ports. It paints this picture of endemic, high-level corruption that has systematically just undermined a nation's finances. The sources suggest this recording is potentially the key breakthrough needed to move this whole effort from a quiet suspicion to a public prosecution, forcing international cooperation and potentially shaking up the entire auto import industry in the region.
It's the difference between Customs suspecting that a $300,000 car paid $1,000 in duty, and having an alleged operator on tape detailing exactly how that evasion was facilitated and protected.
It changes everything.
It shifts the burden of proof immensely.
It is a game changer and a really concerning look into how sophisticated financial crime operates across borders. We've covered the complexity of retagging, the audacity of leveraging fraudulent duty-free exemptions, and the calculated geographic strategy used by the alleged operator.
And, given the alleged multi-billion-dollar scale of the financial damage done to Guyana over a sustained period, it raises one final provocative question for you to think about. How will international authorities now standardize a methodology for auditing past vehicle imports? I'm talking about the forensic analysis of old VINs and duty records to truly measure the full financial extent of this kind of fraud. If this network could operate so effectively, what precedent does this set for other nations struggling with systematic duty evasion? This is an investigation that could redefine international customs enforcement.
A truly critical deep dive. Thank you for walking us through this very complex web of evidence and international implications.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the information you need to know.